Hey Sagittarius Ascendant, this is the forecast starting on the 7th. That's the day of the full moon in Aries. And it takes you to the 13th of October, where we've got the third quarter moon phase starting, which is the moon in Cancer coming into a lovely, beautiful conjunction with Jupiter. So what is going on over this next week? Now, you've probably seen from the title that I'm talking about permission. And I guess there are elements of sovereignty, which is absolutely one of my favourite subjects for sure. But yeah, how does this relate to you? So what I'm going to be doing in this sort of maybe 15, maybe 20-minute forecast is taking you through your ascendant forecast for this week ahead from a Western tropical whole sign perspective. If you're new to this channel, by the way, my name's Louisa. And yeah, when I do these forecasts, I'm really looking at how we can use astrology to help you feel better in yourself, essentially. And to see how the cosmic plan, you know, like the universal planetary picture that's developing is rolling out and unfolding to your advantage. That's what I'm really looking for. So if you'll give me permission, I'm going to take you through that step by step to help you align to what's unfolding. And so, yeah, there's some big things going on. In particular, Mars moving out of the square with Pluto, which I think is going to be fantastic. I think it's really great. However, your ruling planet, Jupiter, is in an opposition with Pluto. And Jupiter's in some really, really great positions right now, and also some really sucky ones. And so, yeah, I do think Jupiter is the planet that really gives us a sense of what's going on in terms of sovereignty. You know, Jupiter's a feel-good planet. And one of the great things about Jupiter in this week ahead is his lovely, his sextile with Venus. So I definitely will be talking about that. So before I get going, I just want to, first of all, just share a bit of gratitude to all the people who've supported this channel as I've been developing it historically, and also right now in terms of my school membership, where you can get some extra bits and pieces. Because like without you, my channel would just not be doing what it's doing. So I'm really, really, I'm grateful to you. Thank you so much. But anyway, let's have a look by going deep into this question of mine, which I think really epitomizes what's going on. So, you know, the question is, where in my life do I need to stop waiting for permission and start acting from self-trust? Now, self-trust instantly makes me think of Jupiter and also Venus, but Jupiter mainly because, you know, Jupiter is all about trusting in the moment. Jupiter's quite a religious sign. You know, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of optimism with Jupiter. And so I really get that. And waiting for permission is, I think, well, it's reminding me of both Saturn and also Pluto. So I'm keen to see what happens as we go through this. As ever, this is completely unscripted. Yeah, I've got some really kind of scrappy notes in front of me, but I literally just follow these, these charts and these little guidelines and just see what comes up. I have no idea where this is ever going, so bear with me. Anyway, I guess the place to start is, you know, what is this full moon in Aries setting off as a potential, and what is it like really starting this week ahead with? So, you know, I always think when we're having a full moon in a fellow element, you know, like, you know, you've got Sagittarius rising, a strong Sagittarius fire element going on there, you know, and a fellow fire moon is always going to be, I think, pretty beneficial. It's going to be helpful. And it's in the 5th house, which is about your self-expression, which again is a real Jupiter theme and also definitely a Sagittarius theme. So to me, that just feels kind of good. And out of all the different places where you could have a full moon, this isn't a bad one, actually. This is actually quite good. If you've got children, you may well find that things maybe explode a little bit with your children. I'm not saying they're going to explode or anything like that, nothing nasty like that. But, you know, the full moon energy in Aries it does have a sort of explosive kind of energy. You know, if we were looking at a periodic table, we would be like handling this full moon with extreme care because it's very reactive to the things around it. But again, in the 5th house, which is about your ability to self-express and to feel passion, I mean, it could be actually quite smouldering if you're in a new relationship, or if you're resetting the sensual side of your relationship, it could be really good. It could even be a time to conceive, you know, a time when you're really wanting to, you know, I guess get into it. Like the fifth house definitely has things to do with what you're birthing right now, what you're creating, hence why I mentioned children. And yeah, it also speaks about the projects that you might be engaging in, the things that are really close to your heart, the things that you're really wanting to grow and birth yourself. So, you know, all in all, a full moon here is actually quite helpful. You know, it will bring to light what you might need to do in terms of getting your project back on track. So that can be helpful. But like I said, you know, a full moon in Aries is pretty full moony. Now, Aries is ruled by Mars, and Mars is currently in your 12th house. And so, you know, as we're starting this week, and I should say, you know, Mars is coming out of this square with Pluto, which is great news if you've got any kind of Scorpio in your chart, which you may well do. And as we go on, you'll see that Mars is coming out of this. And so, you know, first of all, you might not have been full of energy. You might be in a kind of rest and repose kind of stage right now. I often find when we've got the personal planets going through the 12th house, it is a natural resting point, you know, where we can rest our aching joints. You know, with Mars here, you know, it is a time to ease off from being too high maintenance and too high energy in your body. You know, you really do want to relax and unwind your body a little bit. But it can also be a time when you don't feel that defensive. And actually you're just kind of easing back into relaxing. You know, it's not time to be erecting great big boundaries around you. If anything, it's a time to come out of the reactive phase and find some softness. You know, Mars isn't particularly strong here, but maybe it doesn't need to be. Maybe this is the time for you to rest. Mercury here as well is showing that, you know, you don't want to have to be thinking things through too much either. You do actually just want to kind of ease the mind as well. So I really get this like sense that it is time to have a bit of peacefulness. I mean, you've been pretty busy. And actually, you know, over the next couple of weeks, you know, as we get closer to this time of Sagittarius, it's a little bit more than a few weeks, towards the end of November, you'll be really sort of starting to come forwards again. But this is the natural sleepy time, you know, where you know, Sagittarius folks start to drift off and just need to like rest their bones a little bit before the party season of Sagittarius starts. So yeah, this is an Aries full moon, and you know, the fact that Mars is in your 12th house, even though it's pretty reactive, you're wanting to do it quite privately. You're not wanting to be in some kind of high stakes situation that's going to be tiring. You know, I really think you'll probably be a bit of a party pooper. You know, probably not want to be around too many other people, just kind of private, just, you know, sort of see to yourself and make sure that the things you're getting excited about, where things are blowing up a little bit, where things are getting a bit more exciting, you're more likely to do it privately at the moment. So that's interesting. Now, with the sun in the 11th house, again, this is kind of interesting because the sun is trying to get you to be a lot more social. And, you know, the sun in the sign of Libra, this is a time when you might be watching your P's and Q's a little bit, you know, crossing your T's and dotting your I's, because it's so funny that I said dotting instead of putting my T's on as I'm talking about it, but dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Because, you know, the sun in Libra does seem to put a veneer on things. It does seem to be a bit more graceful, a bit better elocution going on there. And again, I'm tripping over my words. I'm not really built for that sort of grace thing. But, you know, it's in direct opposition to the moon, which is raw and it's wild, and it's really not wanting to be that refined. So you might find that, you know, with this full moon energy, actually what's going on is that you're getting very real with yourself and kind of saying, oh, to hell with all that, you know, to hell with all of that sort of serene, calm stuff. I want to relax. I want to chill out in my own little crib. And I don't want to be bothered by anything that is requiring me to put on any social airs and graces. And fair enough. You know, the Sagittarius energy is pretty laid back. Anyway, now Jupiter being your ruling planet, you'll see here, yeah, he's got these lovely trines going on. And I'm very excited about this trine, these two trines here with Saturn and Neptune. This is going to be very helpful for you. You know, I mean, this is a whole other story, but you can see right now Jupiter's in a bit of a bind, you know, in a square to Mercury, There's a lot of inner talk going on. And I think Jupiter in the 8th has been bringing up quite a lot of stuff, in terms of, the sort of inner psychology of you and your makeup and, where it's come from, which family member donated that insecurity or caused it. Also, Jupiter in a square with Chiron is I think this is an interesting one because, Chiron in the 5th can really show where we've got some creativity blockages, where sometimes we might doubt the power of our creation. And, with Jupiter here in this place where we might come to question our own psychology, I think these two in a square, it's a little bit debilitating. It can really make us doubt our ability to be creative. And to me, it's a little bit of a recipe for self-reflection, but, it could take you down with it. And I don't think, that's something I would really urge you to work on. Anytime you're kind of running down your sense of creation and running down the things that you're passionate about and kind of, how it is? I don't know if you do this, but I know I definitely recognize this in myself. The idea of, is it false humility? Where you're kind of running down things so other people don't have to run you down. It's almost like you're expecting to be knocked down, like knocked down a peg or two, as they say in England. Don't know if it translates very well to America, but where you kind of put yourself down so other people don't get the chance to do it. I think it's quite a British thing, in which case, may I just say what a awful bit of psychology that is. It's really, really pretty awful. But to me, that's what it looks like. It looks like this sort of self-deprecation, which is not actually serving you. And so this is going on. And, they're also all in quite a foul square or opposition to Pluto. And Pluto is the controller. So, where I said at the start, where in my life do I need to stop waiting for permission and start acting from self-trust? Pluto here is one of the planets that is eating away at the self-trust, especially, in his opposition to Jupiter. And Jupiter is where all the self-trust exists. So, this is quite the bind to find ourselves in. Thankfully, Mercury is going to be moving out of this. And as we come to the end of the week, you'll see that he has moved out of this square with Pluto. He has moved out of this square with Jupiter. Woohoo! And he's also out of the opposition to Chiron. So thank goodness that Mercury is so fast moving. But what you'll also see is this full moon, immediately after, the moon is going to be, so the 7th and into the 8th, the moon is coming into a conjunction with Chiron, meaning that the full moon, because, I always think of the full moon as 3 days, like the day before, the day of it, and the day after. We're still in that very full moony stage as the moon is connecting to Chiron and then animating and energizing, like in an emotional way, all of these insecurities. And so this is where my sort of permission comment is coming from, because are you going to hold yourself to ransom? Because maybe, and Pluto down here is in your community. Maybe it's the narratives of your community that you feel that you've got to kind of do it to fit in. Maybe it's the narrative that you were raised in, which gave you a very sort of clear sense of what you're meant to be doing in life. And then with Saturn down here in the 4th house currently, retrograde, which, he's just not happy in the sign of Pisces. He's not up to much good I shouldn't say that, because if you've got it in the 4th house, I've just had Saturn in my 4th house. I remember exactly what it feels like. In fact, he's there for me now, in fact. So I do know the very real feeling of Saturn in the 4th house. It can make us a little bit exhausted. Like the 4th house is our home, and it's also our body, like as a home. It's the place that we all come to ground and rest at. And if you can't be restful at home, because Saturn, the taskmaster, is reminding you of all the bills you haven't paid, of all the things you need to fix, and all the things that, just aren't working with a nice flow. Saturn is a bit of a taskmaster. And so he's hard on us in the 4th house. And so anywhere where you're feeling that there are certain social things you're having to do to fit in, And also there's certain things that are creating a sense of I have to do this and I have no choice. This is really stopping you from being your utter self, you know, your expansive self, Sagittarius, your hopeful self, your creatively adventurous self, that part of you that, you know, I mean, I've got Sagittarius sun. I don't have the rising sign, but I've got the sun. And, you know, for me, the whole energy of Sagittarius is can do. It's possibility. And fun has to be on there. And, you know, like Saturn down here is very anti-fun, I have to say. You know, it's like the sucker of all fun. You got to say that very carefully, haven't you? God. So yeah, that's what I want to say about that, because I want to put in some fun, because like Jupiter's up here and you know, he's in this very psychological place. And like I've already said, this is going to get easier as we go through the week. But right, you know, at this, you know, a little bit in, we've got Venus in a sextile to Jupiter. And that's where I want to bring your attention, because, you know, Jupiter and Venus are the two benefics. They're both the two beneficial planets. Now, back in August, on the 12th to be exact, Venus was in a conjunction with Jupiter. And I did a video about the creation of the cycle. You know, every time you get two planets come together, there is a new cycle to do with those two planets, two benefics. It's like a cycle of goodness, a cycle of success, a cycle of like raising the quality of your life, a cycle of feeling much better in yourself. And it's a pretty big and lofty cycle, all things considered. And in the 8th house, which is where it started, it would have been sowing the seeds for some deep psychological upliftment. It could also be sowing the seeds for a better experience of shared wealth with your partner, with your family, with the banks and tax authorities. You know, it's all about other people's money and how you're sharing your assets. And so, you know, Jupiter and Venus here, I think, are very helpful. Now, of course, every time in this cycle when they come into an aspect together, and this is the first major aspect, you know, a sextile, it's showing a different stage on your creative journey of well-being. And so my question to you is, what have you been working on since August? And if you didn't start something about your well-being, this is the perfect time to get into your well-being. And of course, this is also a week when your Jupiter is a little bit tired. He's a bit worn out. He's a bit attacked by these other planets, almost making you question your own confidence, your natural joie de vivre. It's really asking you to dig a little bit deeper. And I think Venus is lending a hand beautifully. And so this is going from the 8th house to the 10th. And throughout this week, Venus is going to be in a sextile with Jupiter, and into next week when she goes into Libra. And so next week, when I do the follow-up to this is going to be an even better position, because Venus is the ruler of Libra and Jupiter, your ruling planet, is exalted in the sign of Cancer. So you've got both of those energies turbocharged, working together. So if there's something you're desperate to try that you haven't, that's uplifting, now is the time to do it. This is working on your inner psychology, and it's also working on your career aspirations. And as of the 13th, it's also spreading out into your contacts, your networks, everywhere where you want to have some influence. And so you've got the power of Venus and Jupiter working together. So yeah, there's some tightness around. Yes, you might be feeling a little bit low on confidence. You might be doubting your creative ability. However, this is a time when you're really leaning against a positive open door. So that's my recommendation, is to get cracking on that one. At least give it some thought, enjoy yourself a little bit. And the reason I say that is because at the same time, Venus is also coming into an opposition with Saturn. So, you know, earlier I mentioned Pluto and Saturn and how they are like the controllers, and they are the planets we might seek permission from. And it's so funny that they're both opposite our two benefics. During this week, you know, the two planets that are associated with us getting out of ourselves and feeling better. So this is where I want to leave this reading. I just want to explore the possibilities of this question one more time. So where in my life do I need to stop waiting for permission and start acting from self-trust? So let's just go back. So Saturn here, to me, is indicating that there's something powerful going on at home that is where you feel so responsible, where you feel like you have no choice, where you feel like you're tied in. That's the energy I've got, you know, because Saturn gives us boundaries, and pretty hard ones, and he tries to create form around us. If you think of the Saturn rings around Pluto, Saturn is forcing us into commitment almost. And so anywhere where you feel really committed to doing something at home, it's stopping you from your natural sense of openness to explore, and it's stopping you maybe from questioning why you're doing things at home in the way you're doing things. It's also possibly, God, it's a really weird image that just came to mind. It's like wearing shoes with a stone in them, you know, where you're wearing shoes and you're going out to work, or you're going to shops or something. I mean, I know this because my kids, like, we go walking on the beach, and sure enough, within about 30 seconds, one of them has got something in their shoe needs to come off, and it's like tiny, like Princess and the Pea kind of tiny weenie. And yet that tiny bit of irritation, it ruins a walk. And this is what I'm really seeing here. You know, the freedom and space that you're needing right now to feel like your life is fulfilled, and for you to naturally zero in on all of those things that bring you self-respect and fill you up with joy, they are being undermined by wearing small shoes. And I don't mean that you're actually literally wearing small shoes. If you are, you need to get a bigger pair. But it's the feeling that your life is holding you to ransom a little bit and saying, you have to do this. If you don't attend to this, it's all going to go wonky. And really what's going on here to me is saying there's something much bigger out there. And all the time you're... to me, it's like self-bullying, because I don't think your home can direct to you what you need to do, unless your house is literally falling down. But to me, it feels like matters of the home are taken more seriously than matters of your heart and matters of your spirit. And it's your spirit that you need to be listening to right now. So, and once you start listening to your spirit, self-trust comes back. And with that comes, I think, the control of how you want to live. So that's the first thing. Where in my life do I need to stop waiting for permission to live? Just give yourself permission to roam. Almost like take those shoes off, like be barefoot. You know, allow your feet to spread. Allow that feeling of space. To me, it just feels the home is a little bit too tight around you, and it doesn't feel very freeing or liberating. Now, the next part to this is Pluto. In the third house, to me, that's expectations of your neighbours, the expectations of the people that you grew up with, your peers, your cousins, your siblings, the people you might work with, the people you see all the time, like you nip down the shop or the cafe. To me, it feels like there's a social construct that is also like wearing a pair of too small shoes. It's blocking your creative flow. So anywhere where you're considering what to wear, what to say, what to do, what time to go out to eat, blah, blah, blah. Anytime you realize you're under the influence of what normal is doing, that's your red flag. That's your red flag that you're not in control, that you're kind of getting permission to be yourself through a load of arbitrary judgments created by everyone else around you, and it's not you in your driving seat. So to me, that's where it is. And the second part of this, if I believed I was enough, what new possibility would I allow myself to explore? I love that. I love these kinds of questions. So, well, I think if you believed yourself enough, you wouldn't listen to what the neighbours were saying or feel under any pressure whatsoever to conform to any kind of ideal. And I don't think you'd be worried at all. In fact, I think you'd be attracting some very sort of, I was going to say unsavoury then, but not unsavoury at all, exciting people. You'd be sort of bringing in exciting people, people with new stuff, technological stuff, inventive stuff. You would be bringing in, like, your whole vibration would shift and change. And in that sense of possibility people would be stepping into your life. And then the Venus energy is really activated. And boy, oh boy, do things start to improve and start working really quickly for you. So my possibility for you, as I'm seeing this, Sagittarius, is that you free yourself from all the limitations that you're accepting as your own that clearly aren't. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that didn't sound too bossy there. I think it probably did, but never mind. So be it. I hope you'll forgive me. And if this like spoke to you, you know, if you felt this at some level and you want to deep dive into this with me, then just like look on my channel page in the notes below. There are links where you can just directly book into my diary and book a consultation, no problem. Or if these speak to you, then consider my membership. You know, I do Monday to Friday, and they're a lot more homespun than this. I do sometimes go in and out of different thoughts, but Monday to Friday forecasts. I also look at love and connection and also money, career and ambition on a weekly basis. So if that's of help, then just get in touch. But anyway, wishing you a beautiful week ahead, where you don't have to ask for permission and where you're coming into deep levels of self-trust like you've never experienced. So lots of love to you and hopefully catch you next week. Bye for now.